Yesterday we talked about concussions within Blackout. We tried to lay it out in as objective a manner as possible, in which we talked about the differences between multiplayer and Blackout. Then we later on talked about how, from what Vonderhaar said earlier, that it seemed like maybe they'd be getting removed, to which he later then clarified on Reddit saying that they were not going to be, and so it was a whole bunch of conflicting information. However, outside of that, we ended up seeing that as of yesterday, my timing being impeccable, following suit with a couple of different cases where as soon as I talk about something in a video, new information comes out and renders that not necessarily obsolete, but not the most up-to-date out there. So today I want to talk to you guys about the more updated information regarding what is now going to encompass concussions, level 3, and cluster grenades, and potentially even a little more in the upcoming future for Blackout. So let's just jump into it. Let's start with concussions because, again, that was the big hot topic of discussion that out of the past 36 hours or so was really kind of the big catalyst for why this entire debate and conversation sparked up in the first place. But that said, Vonderhaar ended up going over on Twitter saying concussion changes are significant as a whole. A reduction in the AoE, or area of effect, range, and duration. You can switch weapons, toss equipment, and melee when concussed, and this should address the very real can't fight back when concussed feedback we've been discussing on Reddit. So if you're not entirely sure how this breaks down into a practical sense, the area of effect is simply how close it can be for it to be effective. Now, by this adjustment, it seems like it's gonna have to land closer to you compared to the proximity that you have available before you're affected by this currently. So that's a great step in the right direction, I think. But my biggest question here that I still have out of this, I'm not really against this change, but I'm just curious to see if we'll see more information on this because it was brought up before. My biggest question I still have out of this in particular is, will it vary based on distance? Because Vonderhaar said the team was debating having it be completely proximity based. So in theory, if you're, say, pegged with the concussion grenade, you'll be blinded for the full 7 seconds, but if it lands just at the edge of that effective range, it only lasts for, say, a second. So it would be completely variable on how good of a toss you can end up having there with that, but they didn't really give any specification here for it, so I'm curious if we'll get any sort of clarity to that at a later point. And the only other concern I have in terms of concussions in general is the fighting back mentioned. Switching weapons, tossing equipment to counter, and then melee is a great step in the right direction, but I find that even if you could just ADS and your ability to swivel and move your POV, even if that stayed the same where it was slowed down and stunned, it would still probably be the proper way to counter. But again, that's just my thoughts. I'm totally cool with these adjustments being made and the testing to be made as well, but I'm curious if that idea ran across the drawing board and was shot down. Next up, let's talk about probably the next biggest thing that a lot of people are curious to hear about, that being the armor adjustment. And this one really only seems like it's for level 3 in particular. It doesn't seem like it's going to be adjusting level 1 or level 2 at all, but instead we'll see solely adjustments to level 3. And that to me, I think, is the biggest part, because you now come into late game and you will see a lot of people with level 3s, and it gets really tough if you don't have one yourself. Level 2, it can be manageable, but level 3 then poses definitely some problems late game. But Vonderhaar ended up saying that my favorite of these changes is that level 3 armor takes 2 shards to repair 1 pip of damage. I still believe level 3 armor has a home in Blackout, and we are going to keep looking for the sweet spot. But in a follow-up, someone ended up replying, the sweet spot isn't about repairs, it's about becoming a bullet sponge with the armor on. Its defense needs to be lowered just a little bit, then it would be perfect. To which Vonderhaar replied to that the protection, in what he calls defense, is being lowered. He's just personally excited about the extra cost to repair level 3. So it seems like we are going to be getting also adjustment values to armor in terms of how much it will actually be able to sponge and how much maybe it will allow players to take damage through that armor. As we know, level 1, 2, and 3 never fully sponge bullets, but instead block a percentage of the bullet and the damage, so you still can get shot in the chest with body armor, but still do damage to you as your player's health. And it seems like this value is going to be adjusted once again for level 3. That was already adjusted a couple of months back, but I'm glad to hear that it's still up on the chopping block and something that still will be a matter of discussion internally. My personal hot take on this, not to stay on the topic too long, I'm actually excited about this. I am genuinely curious to see how well 2 shards for 1 tick of health for the level 3 will play out. I know that late game, it is something that I do come across people that have level 3 and they'll just start repairing their armor if I snipe them once or twice, and it just seems like the gunfight goes on for way too long. And in late game, if it's not those final 1v1s to determine a winner, then it's something you draw so much more attention to yourself and make yourself more vulnerable by waiting for that player to inevitably die if you have a good shot on them. That said, I'm very curious to see how this works out. I think it's a great way to adjust level 3, but we'll see how it all works out in the actual gameplay and meta once it's introduced. As for the clusters, well, David Vonderhaar mentioned pretty straightforwardly that cluster grenades take an extra second to go off. That's some more of the get out of here time. They also have had a damage reduction. Now, cluster grenades are absolutely one of the things that gets spammed a lot in Blackout, and it's something that can be tremendously irritating and tremendously annoying. So to be able to have that extra second to react to it before they detonate, then also not have as much damage be dealt, I feel like even some of the smaller clusters can absolutely destroy you within Blackout. I feel like I've actually had armor completely popped as a result. I might be completely misremembering the scenario at hand, but it is something that still, they are tremendously powerful, even the smaller ones. So as for how much damage, we of course don't know, but I'm sure that a lot of players will be excited to hear that they won't be necessarily as much of a threat, at least in the same way that they are now. And finally, rounding out everything, Vonderhaar ended up saying, big picture, we will do things, we will get it right, we will mess up. We will keep doing things, we will over-nerf, and we will under-nerf. Sometimes it will be perfect. What we won't do is sit around and do nothing. So feedback and analytical data will definitely help to bring this to a new light and maybe bring it to a new level for all the items discussed here in this video. And that's not to say that this is the end of the road. There definitely could be more changes coming to these and other items in the future, but as for when, that's the next big question, because right now these three are probably some pressing things that once you hear about them, you want to know how they play in game. But when will we actually be able to experience them? In his tweets, Vonderhaar said that they were testing it now, so that makes me very curious, because it is quite possible we do have a title update coming on Tuesday. We are expecting that for a league play and the mastery camos for Blackout and Zombies, assuming this update is not delayed any further. So it would be possible, and it would make sense then to add these changes into an update that's already going to be adjusting some core features and core mechanics of the game itself. But that said, if they're still testing it, as of yesterday, if they were still testing, that turnaround might be a little bit too small of a window to try and aim for a Tuesday release. So at the very earliest, I think we'll see this adjusted on Tuesday if we do get that title update. If it does not come at that point, well then honestly your guess is as good as mine. With just under 4 weeks left in Operation Absolute Zero, I'm assuming this is going to be the last title update that we see during this period of time, so maybe it gets held off until way down the line. I think the day that ends off the top of my head, if I'm remembering correctly, is like February 19th or something like that. So still a couple of weeks away, but we also then would see a lot of new core features coming in, maybe a new specialist, maybe new maps with the Black Ops Pass, obviously a whole lot more content in the way of the Contraband Stream, Blackjack Shop, and the themes that come along with the items there, but it'd also be another major core gameplay change and title update required at that point. So whether or not there's something between that point and this coming Tuesday for what we think is going to be that next update, we don't know, but that also could maybe be the latest point these are introduced. I truthfully don't think it's going to hold off that long though. I think that if anything, we're going to see it on Tuesday more than any, but I just don't know if we can say for certain that is the case, because it breaks down into two different ways. One, they're either still currently testing this and therefore the window of opportunity is very small and closing, or it's something that is also very likely in which David Vonderhaar is talking about these changes because they are in the final stages of being tested and they're being finalized and ready to go and ship out with the next update. So I think it really comes down to what perspective you see it from. I honestly think that the closest we'll get and maybe the most likely is this Tuesday. So I'm excited to see where this goes, but that is all the changes here for this. One thing slightly off topic, still slightly on, that I do want to mention though and make abundantly clear is that this sort of stuff is all predicated on data and what they see on the back end. We have absolutely no idea what these numbers in each individual case and basis of all these end up turning out to be, but the tracking tools that Treyarch have in place can pull every single engagement, every single gunfight, and how it came to be in real time, so they have infinitely more information than we do. I know the one thing I saw in yesterday's video was that YouTubers were complaining about the game, making it worse and trying to make it easier to play, and while that was only a small number of concerns that came from that video, I know a lot of people saw it as me just trying to objectively get the point across and convey the differences between why, based off statistical data, spawn rates, and consequences, there might be something that comes out of this. I want to make it abundantly clear that YouTubers and the audience here on YouTube are honestly the vast minority compared to the player population globally of Call of Duty. When millions of copies ship globally to demographics that don't really have a care in the world for YouTube or for searching up guides on how to get better or anything like that, they just want to pop in and kill some time on a weekend or unwind for a long day at work, they don't come to YouTube. So our voices don't ever reach the large number of players that COD is actually geared towards. So while usually trying to remain as unbiased and objective as possible and giving just the cold hard facts, yesterday when I may have interjected some opinion inadvertently on the topic at hand, I do apologize if I upset anybody with some of the thoughts that I had, that there should be a change, or that a change makes sense to see that coming in the future. I do apologize if that wasn't entirely your viewpoint. You're entirely entitled to your own, and I respect it fully. I appreciate the support that people gave yesterday. But one thing this definitely shows me is that being a developer is one of the most excruciatingly tough things in the world, because you cannot please everybody. And that's something that I think, just sitting back as a player, usually laissez-faire about everything. I don't necessarily have too strong opinion one way or the other. We have to consider these changes and adjustments made to the game in an objective standpoint, that the data is there more than likely that we can't see. David Vonderhaar and the team over at Treyarch aren't going to intentionally tank a game by buffing, nerfing, removing, adding something, whatever it may be. They're not going to intentionally sabotage the game. They have more data and information at hand than we do. So right now, all we can do is kind of sit back and wait for these changes and see just how much of an adjustment, whether we like them or dislike them. That's entirely up to us, and that is our own opinion, which we are all entitled to. But that said, I wanted to give you guys the facts here and kind of round out the discussion here that we started yesterday with concussions, and now leading more so into concussions, grenades, and also armor. So let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Is there anything in particular you'd like to add or hope that you see nerfed, buffed, added, removed, whatever it may be? And what do you think about the changes to concussions, level 3, and cluster grenades that are on the table right now? Let me know your thoughts. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to drop a like down below. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Black Ops 4 multiplayer, Blackout, zombies. We got you covered, the best of updates, information, news, all that good stuff. So if any of it interests you, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing. If you guys also want to follow me over on Twitter and Instagram, it's the best place to get connected outside of YouTube. I can live on both those. So those links are both in the description below if you guys want to check that out. But let's head out of the way. Thank you guys all so much for watching. Mine has been Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care and peace.